You know the dark side?
Anakin, if one is to understand the great mystery, one must study all its aspects, not just the dogmatic, narrow view of the Jedi.
Blind we are. If creation of this clone army we could not see.
I think it is time we inform the Senate that our ability to use the Force is diminished.
I see now I've done terrible things. But you started when you murdered my father. I'll never forgive you.
Well, you're going to have to. Take him away.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
This is outrageous. It's unfair. How can you be on the council and not be a master?
Take a seat, young Skywalker.
Anakin did not take to his new assignment with much enthusiasm.
It's very dangerous putting them together. I don't think the boy can handle it. I don't trust him.
In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you're under arrest, Chancellor.
Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?
The Senate will decide your fate.
I am going to end this once and for all. He has control of the Senate and the courts. He's too dangerous to be left alive.
The legacy of the Jedi is failure. Hypocrisy, hubris.
That's not true.
At the height of their powers, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out. It was a Jedi Master who was responsible for the training and creation of Darth Vader.
Welcome to the Chiss Ascendancy podcast.
All right, everybody, hello, and welcome back to
the Chiss Ascendancy.
If you're listening via audio, you know that Samo's with us. It's always great to have Samo on the pod.
Yeah,
and today is episode 81. And,
wow.
Man, we're going to get to that 100 if it kills us. But we're on episode 81 today.
We got to do a big, spectacular where we look back at our favorite memories from all the other episodes.
Yeah, it's got to be something incredible.
The episode that everybody always skips over when they're watching a TV show. We got to do one of those.
Our first 100 episodes. What's it look like? Yeah. It always made me wonder, too, if you say over your first 100 episodes, does this technically have to be the 101st episode? You know what I mean? Anyways.
Including this one.
Right, exactly. Our first 100 episodes, including the one we're doing now. But today's topic is actually a little bit spicy. It's the narrow, dogmatic view of the Jedi, as spoken by Sheev himself. And but before we get into the nitty gritty of the episode, we wanted to do a little bit of news. And what we've got is something that came out just recently. I want to say it was Wednesday night or Wednesday during the day. The Star Wars channel on YouTube has a really cool thing that they do. I want to say it's monthly. Sometimes they miss a month, but pretty regularly, once every 4 weeks or so, they do the High Republic show, which is actually really fun. If you guys haven't been watching that, if you're a fan of the High Republic, the High Republic show is definitely must listen to or must watch material. because you get news, you get upcoming things, and the cool thing is the host does a sit down, like a Zoom or something like that. Obviously, it's probably not Zoom, but she does a sit down with all of the characters. Are you Uriel Poof right now? I was like, what's this guy doing, man? Oh, that's funny. He's just Uriel Poofing it. That's funny. So we got some cover art for the very first installment of the next phase. So we just finished phase 1 of the High Republic, which ended with the Fallen Star or Midnight Horizon, depending on, obviously, I guess Midnight Horizon technically is later than Fallen Star, but Fallen Star is the final adult novel for that. So we're going 150
it's the last
years
one
backwards.
worth investing your time in.
Yeah, Midnight Horizon was decent.
It was,
but I've seen a lot of people
I would
online
say I would put
say they're struggling,
like asterisks around the young part of young adult novel on that one. It was
like
very,
it's very relationship based.
It was very kiddie. It really was.
I think that I really like Daniel Jose Older, and I like the High Republic Adventure stuff that he did. But when the first young adult book that comes out is Into the Dark, it's really hard to follow that up.
Dude, that novel is fantastic.
Into the Dark, I remember reading Light of the Jedi and then Into the Dark and being like, these are both so. I couldn't really decide between the two of them, honestly.
I felt and if you like really look at it, the full novel felt more like a full novel. It felt like watching a Star Wars movie. It felt like this like cinematic experience that you're really sucked into, and there's like a lot of things going on, and it feels like more austere and a lot more involved. But In the Dark, as far as young adult novels go, was also very inviting, and it really, I was drawn into the story without feeling like I was being pandered to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It felt like, a lot of young adult stuff is like very, very, very relational based. And I felt like there were some really great relationships built. But I think that Claudia Gray did an amazing job of balancing, like, it's a parental type relationship with Master Comac and Reith Silas, and it's lateral, or it's it's a coming of age story with Affie Hollow, and we were introduced to our favorite character of all time, Geode, and his stoic solitude and his stoic strength.
Does the podcast know about my my Geode based Dungeons and Dragons character?
No, they don't.
I was listening to the last Fallen Star. I was driving and I texted my friend Colt, and I said, how funny would a Geode D&D character be? Because you got to like do all these moves, based on he wasn't moved an inch, like you couldn't tell he was reacting at all. He kept like a straight poker face. So I
strength.
Just made this hilarious characters. It was a great deal of fun.
It was so funny in the Fallen. I think it was the Fallen Star.
I think Fallen Star he came alive.
Oh yeah. Well, you had Claudia Gray writing the adult novel. It was really funny whenever, I can't remember the character's name, but basically that jackwagon who was trying to like take over Starlight Beacon when it was already blown in half. And he was like, he was sick of Geode's, quiet sarcasm or some crap like that.
Dude.
And he shoots at Geode, and it was like, and right on time, Geode was ready and magnetized himself, because apparently his species can like make themselves like magnetized or not.
Yeah, they can be magnetically sealed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hilarious.
Would you like to magnetize?
I'm just gonna, for the sake of all the listeners, list the character traits that I created for him.
Yeah. So what's the character's name?
What was the character's name? I don't even remember. TBH.
Stone.
I didn't take a picture of it, and I don't remember. He's got my. We'll figure out some way to announce it if we need to.
Okay.
So personality traits, I wrote steadfast, weathered by experience, a diamond in the rough, magnetic personality.
That's amazing.
Ideals, gather no moss, lose no mass, get near a hard place. Bonds, the poles, and non-precious metals.
That's not even trying to be sneaky at that point.
I know, it's so on the nose. And then flaws, A bit dense, a little obtuse, very closed-minded. Other
Heavier than all his
proficiencies in
friends.
language, nonverbal communication emits a natural resonance due to internalized friction and anatomic structure. Oh,
That's amazing.
The piece of Le Piece de Résistance, he was a bard.
So he's a storyteller?
Yeah, he's like, their magic comes from like their musical talents.
That's really funny.
Oh, that's
Classic.
So funny. Yeah, it was hilarious.
So is Colt in your D&D group?
He invited me to a night where he was asked to DM for like a couple of my other friends, and he's like, "Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I do want to be involved in that."
That's funny. Man, we got so off track there because we just love Geode.
I love him so much.
So in the latest High Republic show episode, came out a couple of days ago, they revealed the cover art for this upcoming young adult novel, and this one's by Justina Ireland, and then one of the new, I think there's 3 or 4 new authors that they're bringing into the fold, and her name is Tessa Grattan. And of the 4, I want to say 3 of them have written Star Wars before, whether it's like the guy that I'm really excited for, I think his name is George Mann, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I'm excited for him because his writing stuff so far has been myths and fables, some of those other ones that are like the really crazy, like Sith from 1,000 years ago, like the Star Wars, like kind of horror story type things.
Yeah, like Joe Schreiber.
Yeah, kind of. I would say probably the most we've delved into that style of Star Wars since Joe Schreiber was in the fold.
What a beautiful
But the
man.
book that they revealed the cover for is called Path of Deceit. It's going to be a young adult novel. But the characters on the cover are really
That's what we're
interesting.
here
So
for.
you have a Pantoran Jedi. If you're looking at the cover, it's on your left. And I think it's a Padawan. I think it's a young man, and he's got a yellow lightsaber, so that's really cool.
That is
and then
cool.
on the far right, you have a character by the name of, sorry, I'm reading it here. You have a character named Marta Rowe. She's Everini, so she's the same race, species,
Right.
whatever, and
based
obviously
on the
related
name,
somehow to Markion.
Yeah, you would think that there is some familial relation.
Right. So I don't know if this is supposed to be 150 years before, so this could be his grandmother, his great-grandmother. We don't really know.
Well, and I think
she looks really sweet on the cover, but that's obviously probably deceiving considering the book's called The Path of Deceit.
Well, and we have the I don't know how much have you talked about the Marchion Rowe comic line, but it unpacks how his, species or family. I mean, it's kind of intertwined because it seems like almost like a Spartan type race. It's very
very
close
tight-knit.
knit, very exclusive almost, if you can say that about a species. But they have this somehow intimate relationship with Force users. So I wonder if this is going to play into that at all. If obviously she would be a pariah of some sort amongst her kind, just because there's it's like a stigma, you know what I mean? Like they hate the Jedi.
Yeah. Well, what's so interesting is I know that you haven't watched that episode of the Star Wars, the High Republic show, but something that was really interesting is they mentioned that they're on the planet Dalna, and Dalna is known to be anti-Force users, specifically Jedi. So I wonder if she'll be there and kind of be like, you remember that movie, The Mist, where there was the lady who claimed to be a Christian, and you know what I'm talking about? And she's like the crazy Christian lady, the typical.
And then she killed Starkiller.
Yeah, what the frick? Anyways,
poor Sam.
Yeah, I always hated that. But I wonder if she's going to be that type of character where she looks sweet and she acts like she has everyone's best interest in heart, but it's really to kill the Jedi. Anyways, none of that matters because the character in the middle is this random woman. I'm trying to look at the picture on my phone. So she's this random lady. She's got a white dress on with like a blue cape. She's got this long, beautiful neck, this tan skin, and the character's name, I'll read you the description from StarWars.com. It says, cover art for the young adult novel Star Wars The High Republic, Path of Deceit, written by Grattan in Ireland, features a Pantoran Jedi, a character known only as the mother and a new Everini character, Marta Rowe, for the story that returns us to the planet Dalna to meet a new group, the Path of the Open Hand. Now, we've got to stay on track because we got some important business to discuss with the Jedi, but this reminded me of the Ones, right? And
who's missing
in the Clone Wars, right? Who's missing?
Yeah.
And here's what's crazy is a lot of people who love Legends novels.
This is the part I'm really excited about.
Right. A lot of people who love Legends material never really make it to the end of Legends material. In the last full series, there's a book called Crucible that is the very last book, but the last series we got was called The Fate of the Jedi, and the antagonist of that whole series, like there's all this crazy stuff going on. There's a lost tribe of the Sith that you meet, and you're like, oh, these are clearly the bad guys. But the true ultimate power that, I guess this is a spoiler, but it's been out for like over a decade, so whatever. But
it's been out for more
a long
than
time.
Decade. Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah, I guess they were coming out when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the real antagonist is a character named Abeloth. Now, Abeloth is important because she was just a normal human woman, and I don't really know that she had a name. They just called her the Servant, and somehow she ends up in the presence of the Ones, and I believe it's on Mortis, and she helps be a peacekeeper because, as we know, the father's trying to keep the peace, but the son and the daughter are constantly at each other because they're an embodiment of the dark and the light side of the Force. And she falls in love with this family, not necessarily romantically in love with the father or anything like that, but she just loves being a part of this family. She loves the role that she's playing.
Falling romantically in love with Father Time from Type to Learn 2?
Type to Learn 2. The wizard at the end of third grade Rita Rabbit, you mean?
Yeah, a freaking Dumbledore in a space-time car.
So it's so interesting because she there's two big Force nexuses on this planet where they live. We assume it's Mortis. I can't remember if it's named. It's been a long time since I've read that series, but you have the Well of Knowledge, I want to say. Let's see. You have the Well of Power, and the font of, or the Well of Power and the Pool of Knowledge. So she drinks from the Well of Power, and that gives her Force abilities, I assume, and the Pool of Knowledge. And so what she's hunting for immortality to be able to spend time with this family that she loves, right? And similar to, she has kind of a similar line to Savage, where he's just trying to protect his kinsmen, and then the witches turn into this monster that he really isn't.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
The servant becomes something that the family calls the mother for a time being, and then that's funny. Dude, that is him. I can't believe you remembered that. But as she drinks and bathes in this Force nexuses, she becomes this twisted, like, powerful Force user who can use the light and the dark, but she's unbalanced. She's like the opposite of the father, and she turns into this character named Abeloth. And Abeloth is like this ambiguous, like, evil cloud, but when she takes physical form, she's like a beautiful woman, but if you catch her in the right light, she's got this crazy mouth that, like, goes all the way up to her ears. So my question is, and we'll move on after this question. This is the main news, but it was kind of juicy, and I wanted to theorize with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to make a YouTube short over this, but I wanted to dive into deeper thought that's longer than 60 seconds as well.
Right.
Do you think they're connecting these two, or do you think it's just complete happenstance?
It's hard to say. For anyone who cares, Josiah and I came to this conclusion on our own. Like, completely separately, we made this tie that we saw this powerful, I presume, powerful Force user, who they refer to as the mother, and that's where my mind goes automatically. It's hard to kind of separate the two just because, that's who that character is. And so,
right.
It seems like they've tried to revitalize some of the Legends material, what with the, what are they calling them? The anti-Force cats.
The Islamiri?
Well, no, I remember the Islamiri, the levelers.
Oh yeah,
that just an organic life form that has some ability to manipulate the Force. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's interesting,
and not
because
just like the Force as a Force user, but like as an entity. You know what I mean? It's different.
What's interesting is it seems like the leveler is the tool that you use to control the creatures, which are known as man, I can't remember what they're called. So one thing that I guess they're known as whenever you let's see, the Nameless.
The Nameless, that's what it was.
Is one of the names that
I couldn't remember that.
That they're given.
Ironic.
But the Shriekeray.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the things
that they would love
that they
to
talked
see
about.
them kind of move that direction. It seems like they're kind of touching on the more powerful but less often utilized aspects of the Force with the display we saw from Loden Greatstorm. Just some really, really, really cool stuff to
I wonder
kind of tapping into the dark side for our boy. What's his name? Elzar.
Yeah, I wonder if the mother's character is like the creator of the Nameless. You know what I mean? Or like
I would say not, based on the comics, because they seem to have been discovered on that planet.
Well, that's the thing though, is that like Marchion, however you want to say it, he takes his crew back to that planet to find them, but the mother is 150 years before that. Maybe she's the one that either discovered them or created them or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard for me to buy into the idea that 150
I don't think
years
so either.
is
I
long
just
enough
think
to
it's
forget. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think that
because even then I still feel like maybe Yoda would have been involved to some degree. He's still been like what 250 at that point.
No, he's 900 years basically during the regular trilogy, so he's 870 or 80 in the prequels. That's 250 years before, or 200 years before that. He's 700. Like, he's still freaking 500 plus years old during.
Yeah, so I mean, he's been around the block a couple times. You know what I mean?
But it is interesting to me. Like, maybe the mother's the one that discovers them, or I don't know. It's just, you know, and obviously we're spitballing here, thinking of how could this character be something similar to Abeloth.
Maybe it's something completely different, but that's where my mind goes, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And with the thing is that's so strange is when the Legacy of the Force series was coming out, I'd have to look at the dates, but it feels like they were trying to tie in that series and this powerful character with the Clone Wars that was airing at the time. But it was cool to be reading those books because I actually read them, I think, post Disney purchase. And it was really cool to me that these characters were tied back and forth. But to me, obviously, in a galaxy that's millions of planets and billions of people wide, trillions of people wide, probably.
Oh, yeah, easily. I mean, well, because you think about it, like, I mean, if every planet has like an average population of what Earth is now, and we're pushing what 9 billion now.
I think there's, I could be wrong. I want to say there's trillions just on Coruscant, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, it's
it's 100 billion. It's something
New
crazy.
York. You know what I mean? They're like hundreds of levels on top of each other. It's insane.
But it makes me wonder, like, of course, but Star Wars is also like one of the complaints that a lot of people make is that Star Wars is this giant galaxy, but we have like 12 characters that we use.
Yeah, they can suck it.
That being the
you mean the most interesting 12 characters? Yeah, I love it.
Right. That being the usual writing style, it makes me think if you have a character that's just the mother, it would make sense that she is somehow related or a part of the ones or somehow affiliated with father, son, daughter. Could be wrong, but that's some newsy news. So let's get down to the nitty gritty because that's 20 minutes of one news article we talked about.
I recalled the name of the character I made. You may have saw me early on in the newsy news segment go, I remembered the name of the character. Would you care to know the name of that character?
Of course.
It was the Boulder, inspired by
Amazing.
Avatar, The Last Airbender. And I only talked about him in the third person as well. I would only say the Boulder wants to blah, blah, blah.
The Boulder doesn't like that idea. That's funny. It's funny because whenever the Boulder talks in third person, as you're playing D&D, you could say the Boulder such and such, and it's funny because it's a character, but you're also looking at a rock.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
I know. There were a lot of levels that it worked on.
So let's get into this idea, this concept of let's. Sorry, I'm getting a crazy text.
Let's get into my chest. I didn't realize how loud that would be. So apologies for my gross scratching noises. Sorry, guys.
That reminds me of Singing in the Rain, where it's like, it reminds me of that. So like the mic's closer than we think, or with the pearls, we're like. Anyways,
that joke was so ahead of its time, man.
Oh, for sure. Talking about the narrow and dogmatic view of the Jedi, the reason that I was reaching out to you about this concept is because I just finished one of the highest rated Star Wars novels of all time, specifically for Legends. It's considered an essential, and it's Shatterpoint by Matthew Stover, and it's focused around the character of Mace Windu. Now, I'm probably in the minority, but the more I know about Mace Windu, the less I like the guy. And
I feel about Mace the opposite I feel about Obi-Wan.
What do you mean?
Like, Obi-Wan Kenobi was my favorite character as a kid, and it was kind of arbitrary. As I've gotten older and I've gotten to know more about the character, he's aged like a fine wine. Like, from the character itself to the actor who portrays him, I absolutely love him to death. And I could not be more excited for the Kenobi series coming out next month.
Oh, dude, it's fast approaching, but not fast enough.
But the more I watch Mace's character, and especially as I watch him as an adult, you know, like as a kid, I was like, I don't know, maybe I just like compartmentalized him as like how all adults were kind of stifling. And then like, as I got to be an adult, I'm like, this guy's just a prick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I was thinking that too. I was thinking over, and I was actually talking to Chance about it pretty recently, but he's walking through the Clone Wars, and he's just gotten through the part where Ahsoka leaves the Jedi Order, and Anakin's like fighting hand over fist for his Padawan, and Plo Koon's like, this doesn't seem like Ahsoka. And Mace Windu's like, she's probably guilty. Like, no defense of the Jedi whatsoever.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is, I think that, I don't know, I feel like Yoda, you know, Dooku says that Yoda's the problem. That, like, to have such a fall from grace and you're the guy in charge, like, that's on your watch. But I was thinking about the Jedi, and I was thinking about the High Republic, and I was thinking how crazy it is that, so this book Shatterpoint that came out, you know, when the prequels are at their peak, like I think it came out either between 2 and 3 or after 3, probably between 2 and 3 is my guess. And it's all about how Mace Windu has this ability that pretty much nobody else can use called Vapod, and anybody else that uses it falls to the darkness. He's the only one who can get that close and not go over the edge.
Right.
And it gives him the ability to see the shatter point of a droid's armor, or more specifically, a situation. He can see, like, you know, at the beginning of the book, he's having this recurring nightmare where he's in Geonosis and he's walking up, just like in the movie where you just see his footsteps, and you've got Jango Fett and you've got Dooku right there. And in the moment, he sees the shatter point of the entire Clone Wars, and it's Dooku. And if he would have killed Dooku, it would have shattered the Clone Wars going forward. And but he doesn't want to kill Dooku, so he puts the blade in his dream. Jango Fett is he says Jango Fett's the most dangerous non-Force user in the galaxy. He actually says the most dangerous man, but we're assuming he means not Jedi or Sith. And he says, if I take my blade and I kill Dooku without Dooku knowing or whatever, immediately Jango Fett guns me down, but the Clone Wars are kept from happening and the galaxy is saved. And he, so Dooku's the shatter point of that situation, basically, is the point I'm getting to, that he can see not just shatter points of individuals or armor or a ship or whatever, but entire situations. How do we keep this from happening? How do we implode this toxic situation or whatever?
I think we see Shatterpoint makes an appearance in some pop culture things as well. If you do a jump attack in Battlefront 2 2005, you'll see that there is like a window shattering effect on whatever surface you land on. Or I think in the 2D Clone Wars, the Cartoon Network version, or as people are calling it later, the Tarkovsky version, I believe we see some of that in the General Grievous introductory scene. Or maybe it wasn't Jim Previous. The one where he's like disassembling droids, like by using the force to unscrew all their bolts.
He's on like a Lothal type planet.
Yeah, so
I think that's actually Dantooine.
I think he uses that ability in that scene as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he uses something that's very interesting. I always just thought he was using like the martial arts that a Jedi would learn, but it makes a lot of sense that because the battle droids are made of metal and things, like he would find their weak point and like karate chop it or whatever. But anyways, as I'm reading this book, I'm thinking about it as I'm, you know how I go back and forth between like reading on my iPad and then listening to the audiobook in the car and things like that. As I'm reading, as I'm listening, I'm like, this guy, like and especially since we've gotten the High Republic where we have characters like Skier, who even though the Force is being cut off from him, like he's making the right call and things like that. Well, he's still
a servant of the Force, even though it's being removed from him. You know what I mean? And that there's this idea that the will of the Force is more important than any individual's connection to it or ability to use it or well-being, even that he's like, even in like he sees his being cut off from the Force as the will of the Force so that he can uniquely interact with these beings who prey on Force users. You know what I mean? So it's just like a completely new level of trust in the will of the Force, almost, as opposed to like, I may be jumping ahead here, but if we look at what we would consider to be the Jedi ethic, right? That the defining difference between Sith and a Jedi, especially in like the Legends texts, and I'm really thinking about the Bane trilogy, is a dark side Force user will take the Force and bend it to their will. Like it's kind of the idea that they're in control of the Force, even though if you look at it from a big picture point of view, the dark side of the Force is still manipulating them. But it's the idea that they're bending the Force to their will, right? And then the idea of the Jedi.
Right. Similar like a Kyber crystal, like they feel like they're using the Force the same way.
Exactly. And the Jedi is that they're the servants of the will of the Force, that there's this idea that whatever the Force wills, that's why there's peace, there's no emotion. And as we see the Jedi ideology kind of shift in episodes 1 through 3, we have the idea that whatever the prophecy is, we're going to try and make it kind of like come together for whatever we think it ought to mean. You know what I mean? It's almost ideological to their benefit as opposed to them being in a position of servitude. And I think that's maybe like the shifting point.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I'm reading this book, there's moments where just like his character, like, okay, the things that Mace is doing, that's like in his mind being like, see, I am a Jedi Master. The things he's doing in that book are the things that we see characters like Avar Kriss doing that are showing us she's losing it. Like Avar Kriss is the character that the beautiful part of the first phase of the High Republic is you have Stellan Gios, who is
peak.
You have Stellan Gios, who is like basically the perfect Jedi, essentially. And like he has things that he struggles with, but pretty much like other than just like self-doubt and things, like he's the perfect Jedi, like willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good, all these other things. You have Avar Kriss, who seems to be a little bit more crumbly under pressure. Her anger starts to show and things like that. And then you have Elzar Mann, who's kind of on the outside looking in.
He's kind of like the archetype or like the type and shadow of what we have in Qui-Gon Jinn when we get to experience his character kind of beyond the fold of episode 1 when we shift into the experimentation and the basically really delving into what the Force would offer him, both in like texts, like in the books and in Clone Wars and specifically.
Right. Well, I guess what I mean by his arc is like he's the guy that's a little bit different from everybody else. But by the end of the Fallen Star, even though he's had his brush with the darkness, he's not excommunicated for it. Like his friends are concerned, and he's the one that ends up being the one who's like calm under pressure. And like he makes mistakes still. But what's so interesting is the okay, so like in the comics, for instance, there's a moment where Avar Kriss is like, I just got to kill Lorna D. There's nothing else to it. And Keith Trennis, who's a upcoming trending Jedi, is like, you can't do this. This is wrong. Mace Windu in the jungle, he's like of this planet he's on. It's actually his home planet. It's the planet that he's actually from, which makes it like, I guess that adds depth to the book or whatever. But he's like, get out of my way or be removed. And it's like, and I can't tell if it's like the character's written that way because that's Samuel L. Jackson, or if, you know, it's interesting to me that like I know we're seeing his weakness in the book and that's part of the growth of the character, but it's like, this guy's like the co-leader of the Jedi Council. And I just feel like in the prequels, it's the most Jedi we've gotten, but it's also like the worst of the Jedi that we ever experience. And it's so interesting because I think Mace, like I said, Dooku thinks that Yoda's the problem, but I think that in a way, Mace Windu's the friend in the group that like everybody could want to go to Burger King, but Mace is like, nah, we're going to McDonald's. And everybody's like, yeah, we'll go to McDonald's. Like, I feel like every time there's something happening, like Qui-Gon brings this young boy in who's clearly the chosen one. His midi-chlorian count's off the scales. Why we're only counting midi-chlorian count when recruiting Jedi, I don't know. Like, that's another issue. But Qui-Gon's like, this is the one. He is the chosen one. And Yoda's like, maybe he is the chosen one. And Obi-Wan's like, I don't like the look of him. And like, then the first thing he does instead of trusting in the Force is he holds up an iPad and he's like, what am I looking at? And Anakin's like, a ship, cup, speeder. And I can't get out of my mind Mace's dejected look, like, well, frick, like he passed the test. Now I have to freaking have this kid around here. It's just weird to me that like he's supposed to be the poster boy for strength on the Jedi Council, and he's like kind of a piece of crap, honestly.
I think I don't know. You can kind of like analyze it from a literary point of view, where there's got to be the contrarian. You know, if we look at like the Legends material, especially in like the books that happen after the Heir to the Empire trilogy, where we have Akbar, who's, you know, kind of an important person in like the New Republic, and he's just like a prick to everybody, you know what I mean? But in action, he was like a really useful and reliable individual. I think you just kind of have to expect to have that kind of character around. You know what I mean? That there's just the guy that
you
is
have
really,
to have a
really good
void
at what he
to
does.
fill.
Yeah, I think it's like on a chart what you would call like a high performance, low trust individual, that like somebody that you wouldn't really in a pinch prefer to have your back, but they're really good at what they do.
Yeah, I think that like I understand that Mace fills like the role that is needed, but if we're just in universe, if we're just like we're there,
right? And that's the other way to look at it.
It's like it's hard for me to be. I guess I feel like Sheev obviously was set up to succeed by Plagueis and Bane from 1,000 years ago and all these other things, but I think that it's so crazy that I feel like the Sith built the Shroud of the Dark Side around the Jedi, but I feel like the arrogance of characters like Mace Windu are the reason, and their pride is like almost like the Shroud's been thrown over the Jedi, but the pride of characters like Mace Windu are just like holding it down. Like he's underneath the Shroud, like, no, this is mine. I'm not letting it go. It's almost like he's equally as responsible. I feel like if he was a tool of the Force, if he was a mirror of the Force, if he was letting the Force use him, obviously there's good to Mace, but like just his character, especially in the Clone Wars, like when Ahsoka's on trial, he just is hanging her out to dry. And it's like whatever's going to save face for the Council, which really ultimately means whatever saves face for him and for Yoda. Like if Ahsoka's got to be thrown to the wolves, it is what it is. Like it's so weird. There's another part in the Shatterpoint book where there's this other character, and basically they're essentially related, right? I don't want to get into too much details in case someone wants to go and read the book or whatever. The story was okay, but I kept getting irritated with Mace because I was like, this guy's supposed to be the protagonist and this guy's being a total douchebag. But there's a moment where Mace Windu and this other character, who are basically relatives, have like had hand-to-hand like fist combat. The guy actually beats Mace Windu because everyone on that planet is somewhat force sensitive, and this guy's like super force sensitive. And so they fight, he wins, and he beats Mace, and then Mace, in the midst of that, basically does all this good stuff that helps the people of the planet. And the guy was, it's kind of cool. He speaks to Mace like telepathically. So that's pretty cool. They say that like, if you're not talking to him, he just looks like he's staring at that person and kind of making like grunts and stuff. Cause he's so in tune with the force. Like he reminds me of like a vine bender from Avatar. Like he's in the jungle and he's like kind of a local guy and he's just like protecting the planet. The book was a lot like Avatar actually, where the people are on the planet and they're trying to protect like the jungle and their way of life. And then you have these prospectors who are trying to kill the locals. And Mace is the guy that's sent in there by the Grand Army of the Republic to retrieve another Jedi that's there. And he realizes that the people are hurting, and it's like typical Dances with Wolves story. But this character's like, for what it's worth, you, because Windu is a family name on I think the planet's name is Corrin. Anyways, he says, you are a tribute to the family name of Windu, and for what it's worth, you're a good man, and I'm glad I didn't kill you. And Mace Windu, who this kid's like a super talented Force character, Force user, and he's obviously like in his 20s or 30s. Like there's no reason to bring him to the Jedi Temple. He's not going to be a Jedi. I understand that. But you could at least be like, I appreciate that. You have to put others first. And the guy's name is Carr. Like, Carr, if you put other people first and don't give in to your anger, like let the Force use you. Don't use the Force. Be a vessel for it. Like, I'm trying to use like Christian terms, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, don't abuse the power that you've been given by the Force. Like he could have really encouraged him and then left. You know what Mace Windu does? He says this, I can't quote it obviously, but basically what he says is, you're not a good person. And Windu is my clan name, but I don't claim any family on this planet. My family is the Jedi, and I'm going home. And I was like, this guy's just a total bag of turds, dude. Like he's ultimately the most powerful character that's on this planet. As soon as Mace Windu leaves, arguably the more powerful than Mace while Mace is there, is trying to reach out and like bridge the gap and be like, hey man, like basically in their native tongue, the Dosh is the family. And so when he says Doshalo, it's like brother. And he's like, I'm glad I didn't kill you, Doshalo. And he's like, we are not Doshalai. Like, we're not family. We're not brothers. I don't care that you spared my life when you could have killed me. You're a piece of crap. I hate this planet. I'm going home. I'm taking a bath. Y'all can all burn. Like, and it just doesn't make any sense. And it's so crazy in retrospect. This book's going to be, you know, eventually in the next couple of years, it'll probably be 20 years old. And it's crazy how and I don't know if he was portrayed as kind of a douche on purpose. I don't know what the deal was, or if it was like the loudest voice is the strongest voice and Mace Windu is supposed to be the strongest Jedi on the council. But it was wild how he was this book this whole time. And I think it's because I've been exposed to the characters of the High Republic who like you said, even though Skier is literally losing his connection to the Force, and it's because he's a Trandoshan. They have this disease where they like kind of go feral. If I was him, I'd be so mad at the Force, being like, but the Force is inside me. Can't you stop this disease, this cancerous thing that's taking over me? And instead, he's like, he has that Joseph experience, right? When his brothers are like, wow, we sold you into slavery. And Joseph's like, but it was for the good because we'd all be dead if I wasn't sold into slavery. And now I see the plan that God had. And it's interesting because Skier is like, perhaps this was why, and like, you know, goes headlong and against the Nameless. So it's just so crazy. Like, what do you think ultimately, what do you think it was that gave them this narrow view? Because really Palpatine is not that he's ever in the right. Like, I understand that. But what I'm saying is like, he saw how far the Jedi had fallen and totally used it against them. So when he says the Jedi have a narrow dogmatic view, he's really not wrong. Like, he used the arrogance and the narrow-mindedness and the dogmatic view of the Jedi of the time to turn the chosen one against them. Like, how do you think they got to this place, characters like Mace Windu?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can look at it as kind of like a combination of different things. I think one of the things to think about is what a fan George Lucas is of Greek mythology. I mean, I guess mythology in general, and you can just kind of think of the Jedi as Icarus. You know what I mean? That there's just this great
Too close to the sun?
hubris that, you know, they couldn't be taken down. You know, they had vanquished the dark side, and I think it was just this idea that if a power exists without opposition for too long, I think it just thinks of itself as the superpower. You know what I mean? And so, instead of like the Jedi that were in opposition to the Sith, where they're like, well, the Force is our ally, we need to do whatever we can, you know, to really lean into this thing. And they see like the Sith as the ultimate enemy. They start to become more servants of the Republic. And I think it's just this idea of like, I don't know if bureaucracy is the right word, but the idea of like bowing down to process and ultimately becoming a servant of other people rather than like a servant of the Force. You know what I mean? It's just this, I think it's just the idea of taking a gift, right? If we would call it that they have this connection to the Force, they have this power, and they use it basically to serve something other than the giver of that gift. You know, there's a shelf life on that thing. You know what I mean? Like there was an exploitation that they made themselves vulnerable to. And I think it really just was almost like a master class put on by the Sith that, you know, if you let them kind of get fat and happy for too long, they're going to start to, you know, right away, they're going to get rusty, they're going to get sleepy. And then
it's interesting because like even like the typical movie where you have some fat politician or like Dark Knight, you know, you have the Joker that like he keeps the mobsters happy, and then at the end he's like, I'm just gonna burn all this money. Like I think the Sith were like, we're gonna play the long con, we're gonna let you be in control for this 1,000 years, and then when you really think that we're gone, it's gonna bite you in the butt. I'm kind of mad sometimes that the plan was so perfect. Obviously, I'm glad that good won or whatever, but it makes me kind of mad that the Sith ruled for like 23 years or 25 years. There should have been a longer payoff for that, if it makes sense. I mean, they were up against the Force itself and the Chosen One. You know what I mean? Yeah,
but it's still funny to think about the fact that the Sith used patience more effectively than the Jedi.
Right?
I mean, we're talking about like what? Like I don't know, 30 generations of Sith. You know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting too, because it's like the hardest thing to do as a leader is to believe and give yourself to a concept or to a generation or to
that'll
a belief or an idea that you don't live out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know, that's the hardest part, is like to be a soldier, you know, like imagine you're in the armed forces and you're going over there to defend the freedoms of people you don't know, and ultimately be willing, you know, or same for like first responders, firemen or police officers or whatever, like they're willing to do everything they can so that the rest of us can enjoy the freedom that they're paying for. And ultimately some of them will die and never, and cease to experience the freedom that they're paying for. And I think that's the biggest, like, I don't know, in a way the Sith are like, have this selflessness to their belief.
Right. Well,
but there's a lot of times that the evil in the world, even in our world, seems like, I don't know, it's kind of hard. Like you have people who are like terrorists, or like they believe so much in what they're doing that it seems like, I don't know, it's weird. They believe more in what they're doing a lot of times than what the good guys believe in. I don't know. They're willing to just give it up and just die. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
very,
almost,
very strange.
Ironic that, you know, you have this conversation between Yoda and Luke that the struggle of the masters, that someday they're going to be surpassed by their apprentice. And that's the struggle that the Jedi, that the loving, caring, cultivating, you know, like all encompassing kindness ideology group of individuals, that would be their struggle. And at the same time, I mean, I assume because Bane is canon through Clone Wars that the rule of two, you know, also survives. I mean, we see that in episode 1 as well. But the idea that in order to be allowed to go on, the apprentice by necessity has to surpass the master. It's funny that like there's this great weakness in the Jedi,
which is like the hoarding of power.
Hubris,
yeah, that they would never
made
admit
the
to.
Sith strong. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting too, because like I can imagine like those old cinematic trailers for the Old Republic, and they finally get back and they take over Korriban, and a young Malgus is like, "Welcome home, master," and then kills his master. It would be like, it kind of reminds me of like in that moment. Of course, no one wants to die, right? But it's funny because like almost that Lego Star Wars humor where the guy's cut in half and he's like, "Proud of you." Like, because ultimately the ultimate thing you can serve the dark side with is either you achieve immortality, right, which is a goal of all Sith, is to achieve immortality because they're hungry for power and control. But if you can't achieve it, then it's your job to pass on that desire and that passion and that strength to the next generation, and believe eventually there will be a Sith Lord that will achieve immortality and the Sith will reign forever. It's just it's so funny that the Darksiders
in a way
seem to be so much more
communed. Yeah, that's super funny.
But I was thinking about this. Way. Yeah, it's obviously like the loophole
almost on accident. They were almost accidentally more selfless than the Jedi.
Yeah, like exactly. Like they accidentally like selfishly throw Jonah into the sea, and that's what saves them from the they do like the right thing.
I think it was like a Christmas special of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, or what was it? What was
Avengers?
No. I know that I messed up. He-Man and Skeletor.
Masters of the Universe?
Masters of the Universe. And Skeletor's like helping these kids, and they're like, "Oh, thanks for helping us." And he's like, "I am not nice." And he like runs off, you know? It's like that.
That's funny. It was funny, like a happy accident, like shout out Bob Ross. But it was funny when I was talking to Finn about Rey and all them, and I was like, "Who did you think she was?" And he was like, "I thought she was a Kenobi. Kenobi's the first person that calls out to her." He actually made a really good point. He said that just because the saber initially belonged to Anakin, it made sense to him that Kenobi would use the saber to call out to Rey, because the saber was in Obi-Wan's possession like 6 times as long as it was in Anakin or Luke's possession. I was like, wow, that's a really good point. And it was funny because we seemingly by pure circumstance and accident predicted it right because of this move.
I was walked out of the theater and I was like she's 100% Sheev.
Yeah. I remember leaving and being like, yep, that the whole lunge is that's a Sheev Palpatine move.
So I've been playing Lego Star Wars like a fiend. And I haven't unlocked Palpatine yet, but when you play as Kenobi, he does his signature, kind of like wrist twirl with the lightsaber when he runs. I'm really excited to see if Palpatine does the signature.
The spin move? It'd be funny if he made a funny scream like that, yeah.
It would be super fun.
So as we're kind of winding this down, it's funny, I'm trying to like talk about this whole moral failure of the Jedi and how it led to the rise of the Sith, but we just ended up pooping on Mace Windu the whole time. I was so disappointed because I read the book and I thought this is like the defining book or media that Mace Windu's a part of, and I'm hoping that it's going to open my eyes to the complexity of the character. And I finished it and I was like, what a turd. Like literally the last chapter, like it's the last chapter and he's back from his mission and he's like, yeah, and Chancellor Palpatine kindly opened up his office for the debrief. And I was like, this guy just doesn't get it. He's blind as a bat. And it was funny at the beginning of the book, they talk about the way that Palpatine decorates his office and they're clearly alluding to like, wow, this is a cool statue. And I'm like, it's a Sith decoration, you dingus. But he was saying that he really liked the way that Palpatine decorated his office. And Yoda said he missed the way that Chancellor Valorum decorated the place. And freaking Windu goes, I kind of like it. I was like, bro, this guy could not be more of a freaking moron. And then in the last, like the closing chapter, like, every Star Wars book, like the missions ended and then we all talk about what happened in the last chapter. It's like that. And he's like looking back on it, this and this and this. And he says, he said, I can't remember if he thinks it or if he says, I think he says it out loud. And he's like, and I mentioned to myself, if I could have saved her, it's an important character. I don't want to spoil it. If I could have saved her, I would have let the whole planet die. And I was like, what is wrong with this guy? Clearly he's struggling with attachment. Clearly he's struggling with the dark side. Clearly he's struggling with complete control. That's why he invented Vapod. And, but to close off, I wanted to get your thoughts on something. I wondered if part of the start of the fall is this bubble, obviously the bubble that the Jedi live within, and their politician stuff where they're really getting involved with the Republic and they're kind of like in bed with each other. But I wonder if part of the issue is introduced. I love speculating, but at the end of the Fallen Star and in some of these comics, I think it's in Trail of Shadows, the comic. I can't remember if it's in Fallen Star, but you've read Trail of Shadows, right? Where they're like investigating and they find the Nameless and all that.
They have the nice, like, what's the something Falcon, where they have like the jazzy piano solo silhouette.
Oh, yeah.
Sidebars.
The Maltese Falcon?
Yeah, that's the one. Oh, that's so funny.
Is that what it's called? The Maltese Falcon?
I think so, yeah.
Crap. I'm remembering McGee and me. It's called the Molting Falcon. But anyways, there's a part in there where it says, until we can figure out what this weapon is that the Nihil have that can kill Jedi, we're recalling everyone back to the temple. And it's like in the moment of this dire need in the Outer Rim.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because clearly by the end of the High Republic, the Republic is going to end up giving up to some degree on the Outer Rim, because the Outer Rim is not in the control of the Republic by the time of the Phantom Menace, and Republic credits don't work on me, and they're no good here, and all these other things. So, and slavery is still happening out there. Like the Reach is not out there, and so it's interesting that the Chosen One being a slave and having to be rescued by the Jedi, but you can't buy him and his mom, and the mom staying behind because she's a slave. And then even though she's sold into freedom to Kliglars, even though she's sold to him, ultimately her being on Tatooine because she's a slave and couldn't leave with Anakin is what leads to his first big step into darkness. And it's so interesting that slavery being in the Outer Rim and Anakin being born a slave and all this other stuff that leads to his darkness and his biggest step towards the fall, towards Vader, might be because the Jedi of the High Republic want to preserve themselves and don't really trust in the Force when push comes to shove, and they isolate themselves on the temple until they can figure out what's going on with the Nameless. Have you thought about that? Do you think that's one of the biggest steps towards the downfall, is this retreat to Coruscant?
I actually saw that as an act of humility. I seem to remember there being a coordination with non-Force sensitives, and I think it was one for the preservation of the Jedi, especially after like the sacking of that entire Jedi temple.
Right.
But part of it was we recognize that we're not an asset in this fight, and until we can figure out how to combat it, we need to put people that can. I mean, like a non-Force sensitive person could theoretically dispatch that threat fairly easily. There's not going to be any terror. I mean, it's just going to look like a thing. You shoot it, it's done. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I kind of viewed that recall as an act, like what I would consider to be a wise action. That if there's nothing they can do to combat this threat, then the wise thing to do would be keep us safe until we can figure it out, and in the meantime, send people that can fight it more readily, more easily. So I didn't see that as a step towards weakness. I thought that was maybe an action as a result of them still being fairly on their feet. You know what I mean? So that's the way I saw it, at least.
Yeah, it could be either one, really. I think I do agree. It is I guess I can't, they're fictional characters and I can't really pick their brain, but I am interested to know, like, if the decision's made out of humility, I'm 100% on board. I'm worried that the decision was made out of fear because they keep losing Jedi left and right. And I know it's one of those things where it's the right thing because you also want to preserve the Jedi, because what good is the Jedi Order if everybody keeps dying?
Right.
But I wonder if like the rushed decision was made out of fear and preservation, which is an emotion that is based in the dark side. you know, it's interesting that like when Anakin's having all these crazy dreams and premonitions, Yoda's like, you have to choose to let go of everything you fear you will lose.
Yeah.
And the Jedi during the High Republic, you know, the biggest thing that they fear to lose is one another. And so it's very interesting. If they make the choice out of humility, I think it's the right call. But I think part of it, when I was thinking about it, as I was reading and listening, part of me was going, dude, all these people are in need and you're just going to tuck tail and run like right in the middle of this. Like what's everybody else going to do? And ultimately, I guess, even if it is the right or a decent choice, it ends up costing the galaxy in the end, because clearly by the end of the High Republic, the Outer Rim is not going to be under the control of the Republic, and all of the slave trade and all of these things are just going to continue forever. And that ends up costing Anakin his mom, which is, like I said, the biggest step towards darkness. So I'm interested to see where that goes. I think that they will go back in time to really cement the history of who the Jedi are, or who the Roe family is, or what the Leveler is, what the Nameless are. I don't know how long they're going to be in that era. And I think that they'll jump back. I think it'll be similar to how Star Wars was written, right?
Well,
that
and I
is
think
4, 5, 6, then 1, 2, 3, then 7, 8, 9. I think they'll do High Republic, the first launch, phase 1, phase 2 will be in the past, and I think phase 3 of the High Republic will almost catch us up to the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, well, and you have introduced me into a thought, which is, in a way, it may be the introduction of the fall of the Jedi, in that the Jedi have become to be the arm of the Republic, and that if the Jedi have to be recalled, we think about it as the Republic not caring about those outer reaches at all, as opposed to, let's pull back what we should consider our ambassadors, you know, the people they're supposed to be,
right,
you know, on their
keepers
feet
of the
really
peace,
well,
not soldiers,
in solid, you know, solid minds, and send in the foot soldiers. You know what I mean? That would be like the genuine arm.
That's a really good
Republic.
point.
So
yeah, either way, they've become so intertwined, and you know, nobody's perfect, and I get that, but there's a lot of things that have happened in the High Republic that I'm like, oh crap, we're going dark. Dark. Especially in the
case of
Fallen
Elzar,
Star.
man, I sure hope so. He was so sick nasty when he was using the dark side of the Force.
I know, dude. I know. And it makes me wonder, like,
it was
the
some
same
freaking
way
Force Unleashed type crap going on in there, man.
Well, the same way that Ventress doesn't count as a Sith, I wonder if some of these characters will fall dark, but they won't be Sith necessarily.
I hope so.
I mean?
I want to see
that would be really cool. Also, I think something that I really want to know, I'm sure the Acolyte will end up filling this gap once that show comes out, but I think sometimes subconsciously we think, okay, cool, so Darth Bane, and then that happens, and then 1,000 years later the Sith are here again as this character, but it's not like they cease to exist and then Sheev was like, somebody's got to pick this mantle up. Like,
right. They're still happening. There's things going on back
Sith
there.
For 1,000 years. They were not extinct as they thought. So anyways, very interesting to see. I wonder if the Acolyte will show us some of that. I wonder
sure
if
so, man.
You know, there's rumor of High Republic shows being written.
I, as a snob, hope not.
Just because you want it to stay books only?
Yeah, I just I mean, that's what it was introduced as. You know what I mean? That it was going to be books and comics medium only. And I think it's kind of beautiful in that way. So I don't know. I feel like it loses a lot of its power and mystique if it gets
I do think
into
that
a TV show.
The Fabulous Five that started this thing with Justina Ireland, Charles Soule, Claudia Gray, Daniel Jose Older, and Kevin Scott, I think they've done a ridiculously fabulous job of having 5 authors contributing to one story, and it all feels cohesive. That was the big complaint. The big complaint of Legends material was like, well, this person's this way in this book, and then they're this way in this book. You know, that was the big complaint with Book of Boba was one way in The Mandalorian, and then he's a different way in Book of Boba. And is it the same character? Has he gone soft? And all these other things. I think they've done an amazing job. 5 different authors who write 5 different ways, and they've done this cohesive story. So if they do end up having a show, whether it's animated or live action, I would hope that there would be like a council, like a freaking round table with those 5. And of course, we've got these 3 or 4 new authors that are coming on. I would hope that group of 5 or 10 or maybe closer to 20, once you have the other animators and stuff who have a say in how things have gone, or producers, because books and stuff have producers as well. I I would hope that those people all have a very strong and loud voice that is listened to with how the characters should be made and even how it looks. Like, I think I have a picture in my mind of what the High Republic and the Jedi of the High Republic look like.
Mhm.
And I don't want it to be like, you know, I don't want for it to be a sequel trilogy in the sense that I love the sequels, but you have a character like J.J. Abrams who doesn't understand Star Wars as at a depth that someone like a Filoni has, or like the 5 that are writing the High Republic now have.
Mhm.
And then you have Rian Johnson who comes in, who completely, I think Rian Johnson could hold his own with anybody we know about talking about Star Wars at length and at depth. But he came in and he totally went away from what J.J. Abrams had done. And so cohesion is the number one issue with the sequels. I think individually, all 3 movies are great. I can watch any of them. I think that the cohesion of the story is the problem that a lot of people have. And the cohesion of the sequels with everything else. And so if they do end up making a show, I would hope that the voices that have made such a great family of stories would have a very, very big part in that. So anyways, we'll let you run. Hey, if you guys have enjoyed this, if you think we're completely off base and Mace Windu is the greatest Jedi ever, then let us know. You know, that could be your favorite guy.
Claim, though.
Do substantiate your claim, though. Why is he greater than Plo Koon? The answer is you're wrong.
He's not. Plo
Koon is right up there. Yeah. I love that we got Luke in The Mandalorian, but I also would have been freaking floored if we got Plo Koon.
Yeah.
But if you enjoyed this, you guys know the rules. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave us if you'll leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and we'll write us a review, we will read it on air. The most recent one that I saw, it was just a short one called "The Shirt Came Off." And so there was no context or anything, but that was pretty funny. But we will read those on air, and that helps the show get more exposure. Of course, we're still trying to grow this channel, get more people listening to these wild thoughts from the Chiss Ascendancy podcast. So thank you for tuning in. The Force will be with you always.
And remember, the only family you have is me.
You guys take it easy, and we will see you next time.